Good evening, everyone. It is 6:00 p.m. and we will call the Hudsonville Public Schools Board of Education work session for March 25th to order. First up, if you could all rise, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up is approval of our agenda. We have a motion. Support movement from Mr. DeWitt and support from Dawn Sneedy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. First up is recognition of visitors and hearing of people present.
Just one tonight, Jenna Braun.
Lucky me.
First, I want to thank the board for understanding that cohesion is needed, and I applaud the work of bringing in the third-party consultant. Bringing a stranger into our space, especially one that has sometimes felt contentious, can feel vulnerable and bring on feelings of defensiveness. But I was relieved to see that almost all of our members were willing to participate in hard and honest conversations and talk through problems and issues and underlying tensions within the group. A lot of what was said by the consultant was spot on regarding sore spots and underlying issues, and I know that that can feel vulnerable and scary, but I appreciate the willingness of most of those that did participate with this assessment. The progress that has been made through this can only make our board healthier and more successful. The chord that struck me most was the consultant's constant reminder that we are all here for all students. Our board isn't built on the voices of outside community members, even me, and it isn't built on personal agendas or egos. Our Board of Education is about serving and ensuring the opportunity for success in education for all of Hudsonville Public Schools. I know that sometimes I crack jokes, poke at issues, raise my voice, but please believe me when I say the work that you all do here changes students' and teachers' lives. And I think that it's important to stop and thank you for doing all of the hard work to support all of our teachers, all of our staff, all of our subs, and all of our students. So as we move through this meeting tonight, I thank you for doing the work, leaning into uncomfortability, learning more about yourselves, and how to communicate as a functioning unit. For those of you that might not be at that same level, please allow yourself to be vulnerable to this process. Accept past mistakes and grievances, and let's move forward. Our students deserve it. So I don't thank Stephanie for always recording this so I could watch the MASB consultant. Thanks.
All right, thank you for taking the time to address the board this evening. First up are discussion items, and we start with the Baldwin campus parking bid recommendation. We have to Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. So just a little background on this project. We are actually reworking 4 very large parking lots. There are 2 that are directly east of Baldwin Street Middle School, and there are 2 north of that are basically east of the football field, between the soccer stadium and the football field. Along with that, we're reworking the drive in from 36th, almost all the way up to to that big parking lot right next to Baldwin Street Middle School. So 4 big lots. There's 5 large ones over there. There's 1 right in the middle that we're not doing. So we're doing the two on the ends, 2 on each end. What the work we're doing on those lots varies between the large one that's closest to the school. We're doing almost a complete rebuild. Down to we might be taking out the sand. Definitely the gravel that's under it, and mill and replace the pavement. So that's going to be big work. If you've been over there, I've been there at times when, with the water on that site, there's water shooting out of hills when it's it seems like water had to go uphill to get there on those clay shelves. Just, there's a lot of odd geological features for that lot. The rest of the lots, we've got priced in, bid alternates, you'll see in the bid tab, that is the max exposure we would have for those alternates. That's the max exposure we would have if we did 100% called base replacement. That's just the gravel underneath. We've got other allowances we had them bid. We're not asking for your approval on the other allowance for sand, but if we have to do any sand work in those lots, they bid an allowance for that too. So there's a lot of work there, and the bidding was phenomenal. Even though we didn't have a ton of bidders, we had good bidders, 5 real strong companies, and Al's has done work for us in other projects. We've been satisfied. They're the low bidder. We're recommending for the earthwork, and Light Loads out of Hamilton. They're both fairly local contractors. They've done work, but there's other bidders in here too that have also done good work for us. So we feel good about, especially with on the asphalt, with the range there of 500 and basically 39,000 to 549,000. We've got a tight range of real tight pricing there. So it's a lot of work. It's going to happen over this summer, and the OEKs work closely with contractors. I'd like to thank Dan for being here. He's our project manager, and Dan did the post bids. Lee's involved to some degree, but this is going to be quite a big project, quite a needed project. Those parking lots, especially the main lots, the two on the extremes, the farthest north and the farthest east next to the school, really need a lot of work. What's that?
You want to show it on the screen?
I guess I do. Yes. So this lot here, the center line right here, needs a lot of work, and this is the lot we're not doing, and this lot down here is a complete rebuild, base right down to the same. And then the other bids we have there for alternates, they involve alternate pricing is to do 100% gravel replacement on these, but we feel like we're gonna need to do some gravel replacement in the middle here and minimal gravel replacement in these two lots right here. So, that's it.
Bond money, Pat?
Pardon me?
Bond?
Yes.
Time schedule?
Well, they're gonna get on
I
it.
don't like that sound.
They're gonna get on it
October.
as soon as they can this summer. I mean, they'll be in there right away, and they'll be out by the second week of August.
Guaranteed.
Um,
What's the first football game that went at home?
They have to be practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weather's gonna be an issue, but they're gonna do the drive-in from 36 first, and get on the two north lots by the athletics area there right away. We expect, like I said, there's gonna be some down the center line of the north lot, there's gonna be probably some gravel replacement, but getting those two big lots done and then try to do that, it's not one pour, but it's like, you've got the asphalt trucks on site at the same time. And once they're done with that, we'll have a lot more freedom and ability on that site. But they're gonna get those mostly done and then start on the big project by the school.
How old are those lots?
So the one by the school has had a total replacement, the one right, yeah, but I'll look back in records, and one says 18 years, and another set of drawings says it was done 23 years ago. I think there was work done on it along with Georgetown in 2006. There was something done with that parking lot beside Baldwin. But it hasn't held up terribly, it's just, it's tough, it's a tough site. Really tough site,
Because of the
underground,
underlying.
in the soil, drainage. So we're gonna be doing a lot of drainage improvement, and there's a small altar down there to do some additional tiling under that as well.
Is there, you've seen the parking lot during homecoming and everything else. Is there a opportunity here to expand parking?
So we looked at that, and with the swale, the drainage that's there now, they're kind of built for what they're built for. We had like, in here, we had consideration of putting parking out here, but it's almost like some of these things to do big expansions. We have so much property here, we're probably wiser to look at like some master planning
Sure.
and look long-term what we wanna do with this.
Sure.
Because we've got, the township is interested in putting a path through there. We've now got out here, we've got here, up here, we've got a road now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of things we need to do on that site. But we did think a lot about having a lot right here.
I think even future conversations about a maybe potential future bond could include some enhancements to that site, which would include parking and other facilities. Soccer needs to be,
Yeah.
you take that into account.
So everyone always parks at that north practice field. Everyone parks on the south side of it anyway. Like, can you just put in parking spaces there? I don't know. Just apparently, yeah.
My question's gonna be similar, like on Friday nights, a lot of people park across the street at daybreak, and I'm just waiting for somebody to get hit, running across that on a dark Friday night. And I think we talked a few months ago, that like you just mentioned, the township is eventually looking at maybe putting a path there from Baldwin towards the 5-6. Is that?
Yeah, there's more of a path as opposed to a sidewalk conversation.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that park at the church, not because they can't find parking at the high school, it's because they want to get out.
Yep.
So if you look at that, quite frankly, the south lot of the two that are to the east of the football, that one's not always full when people are parking across the street.
Yeah.
It's hard to build parking for a big game, because not every game is.
Yeah, you're using it a few times a year.
Depends on the weather, right? There's so many variables, it's hard. But if there are other, soccer's there, football's there, if there are other events that take place there, I mean, some of our biggest events are banned. Because you have the big buses that show up and the trailers, and they've got to maneuver through there, and then you've got multiple bands coming through that stick around till the awards and all the parents, so those are big events.
And there's often parking, in front of Baldwin.
Right,
I
just gotta
mean,
walk
there's a lot
through.
of,
Yes.
exactly. So
Yeah.
folks,
There are some challenges behind this. I don't need to park in a parking lot, I can park on the grass. So we're looking at some enhancement to help curtail some of that. It is not ideal for some of our grounds when people park wherever they want.
Speaking of band competitions, so this was a while ago now, when we used to host band competitions here, we would park buses. So the parking crew we'd park buses up in that swale, that triangle up there, just because, we ran out of space.
In the bottom.
Yeah,
The
so we
bottom
park
rows,
buses.
bottom
Yeah.
I've noticed staff parking things on the service road, like us driving in there. So we have made different uses, we just haven't really wrapped our arms around how to use it totally. But there's things we can do. At one point, we talked about shuttling people over from the new parking we have at the 5-6 building. But we just haven't developed it yet.
There very well could be plans that the board has to make decisions on that could impact this brand new parking lot we're putting into. So there's that's part of the trying to simply resurface the east lots, because that might come into play. But we're talking years down the road, and this needs to be done. If you've driven through there on any given afternoon or evening, it needs to be done.
Yep, makes sense.
I think to your point that we're not doing anything now that, stops us. It stops us from doing more.
Have we talked to Daybreak? Like, or is that like an allowable thing, Dr. Vanderjack?
Yeah, so
They're fine with us?
they know when we have big events, very similar to the funeral home by the field house. We have conversations with them about, and across the street, with what it looks like. They're aware of when events are, from graduation to football games. We get them the schedule, and they're good about it. They've never
Haven't they charged for some events?
believed so, but I don't park over there.
Yeah.
Don't give them any
Get
ideas.
there early enough, I don't park.
I think we've actively did, or possibly for, state track finals, that kind of stuff possibly, but
Maybe.
not on a regular Fridays.
To that point, we do have to wait till after state. We still host Division IV state track, so that parking lot will have to wait until that's done. I think it's the first Saturday in June.
Any other questions for Brett Brooks?
Nothing scares you out there? No?
All right, going next, our high school clock and public announcement bid recommendation. Mr. Briggs again, I'm assuming.
Thank you. So this, I mean, as it says, we are replacing and upgrading the current clocks and public address system to, I mean, the big feature here is the messaging clock that's in our newer facilities. And it's just, we're hearing great things from staff about it. It's able to push out not only, an audio signal, it's got an alarm, it's got, an alarm light on it, and it's got a message board on it. So with the high school being the high school, we felt it was important to elevate this as a priority. It wasn't really in the schedule to do it right now, but why not? Because the high school, I mean, it's a security priority, it's such a big facility. And we already have these in other parts, definitely the new connector, we have them there. And in the new parts, the new field house part. So this, if you look at the bid tab for a moment, the bidders we have with Moss, Acorn, and Shareco, we felt that there were elements and there's times when we pick things out of projects, especially the way CBD, and I think Chris for being here tonight from CBD, we have the ability to pick Shareco as like low bidder for low voltage cabling. We could pick Acorn as low bidder for public address. However, with this project, we need to, coordination is really important. And we do have a tight range, so I feel like Moss's price between 93,000 and Shareco's price of 92,000. I feel like, there's a tight range there. And then public address, Moss is high on public address. In interviewing them, we know why they're higher. And then clock systems, Moss is lower than Acorn. So the total bid is 648,000 with a voluntary alternate we accepted from Moss to 721,000. We just feel we're gonna get a lot better coordination. It's an important project. We are gonna submit this project because we have safety dollars from the state of Michigan that we've been allocated over the last 2 years. We're going to, if approved, we're going to submit this, we'll charge it to those funds, which is very timely. It'll save the bond fund. It was a project that was planned for, just checking to make sure it's not, it was a project that was planned for in the bond fund, so it'll give even more relief to the bond fund.
So that'll cover it all then? That's grant or that?
Yes.
It won't cover the whole district, and that's still the
Yeah,
goal.
this is only high school.
This is just the high school, which are currently on 3 different systems.
I've seen bosses in a few times. Are they been the ones doing the new buildings?
Yes, in most cases, most places. There's been a little bit of work by a couple other contractors, but they're doing the bulk of it.
I've seen park that Bauer. I've been seeing them at Bauer at night.
Yeah, remind me again what the plan is then for the rest of the district, if this is the high school.
Well, it is our long-term plan to get this kind of system in everywhere. We just have to, because there's other pieces, the high school's already had the audio-visual upgrades in there. So it's just, we have to get in there and do the cabling first. So right now, we're doing work at Bauer and Park. And next, we're just gonna work our way through the district. We've got a lot of work done at Forest Grove this summer. So we're gonna work our way through the district and get done.
Are we looking at like a 3-year timetable or less than that? Or?
So there's a little bit more to it, and there's the funding, which is part of it, which the grant helps substantially with the high school, which is a major project. We took them based on what was working and was not. Forest Grove did not have a working PA system, so that was high on the priority list. The work at Park and Bauer allowed us to kind of piggyback the work with the gyms going in, the extra classrooms with clocks throughout the building. Obviously, the 5-6 building was our first building to try. Bauer's in the same boat, with being not all that great. Then you look at Riley, which is in pretty good shape, but we like to get everything. So we're hoping 2 years, but a lot of it depends on funding and where we are. But we do believe that we've tackled some of the key facilities that we had some concerns about communication, and those are now tackled, which is nice. It's hard to rely on PA systems when they don't always work, and now we're in a good spot.
When do these safety grant funds have to be spent by?
We've got one expiring this summer and one expiring next fall, next September 25.
Do we have to, is there any more hurdles that you have to jump through to satisfy the grant, or this is whatever we decide to spend money on?
It's not as, I would say there are a couple things that are disallowed, but these things like this definitely fit the bill for safety and security.
Dr. Vanderjagt, you had expressed at a PTO meeting that I was at about another project that might.
That falls under the same.
Okay.
So we're looking at, we've talked about that as the board also, the
Right.
speed signs by the 5-6 building, by Bauer Elementary, by Baldwin's campus, Forest Grove, Jamestown, Lower.
There was an even bigger element that you were talking about at that meeting, as far as over on Baldwin there.
The traffic signal?
Yeah.
So yeah, the portion from from the district will match the portion from Georgetown,
Okay.
which comes out of that same
Okay.
large grant. And we were fortunate enough that grant is one of those that whoever applied got their portion. And if people didn't apply, then the value increased. We just found out we have another $240,000 because other people didn't apply. So that's what we want to get some of this other work going.
That's a huge, I know people turning left off of 40th on the Baldwin. If we put a little sign up there, brought to you by Hudsonville Public, I think that'll help.
I don't think that's legal, but
Look into it.
People are reading it, or they
let's just keep our kids safe.
There you go.
Yeah. But President Hooper, we can look at a more definitive schedule, but right now we are we're working, it's a networking challenge too. It's been a build as you go and make the network work. I think a couple network work, sorry about that. But a couple, was the last meeting, we asked for the additional servers, licenses. That has a little bit to do with these projects too, because but I didn't talk a lot about the other side of this is the public address system is network. And so, and what I'm familiar with, and this is something that Chris and our technology director, Jeff Smuckers, are doing. They're doing this with category 5 cabling, which is basically cabling most data connection those computers are on. So these things are on basically a network connection. So it's just a lot to coordinate.
They're powered through that also, so it changes things when power goes out. the network stays up because of the generator, the public system will stay on. If you've been at the high school, when there's an announcement, you see the light blinking. One of the security conferences we were at a week ago talked about how a PA system, if kids have their earbuds in, they might not hear it, but it blinks like a bright light, which draws your attention to it. And then we can put public announcements, we can put it right on there, whether we're in a lockdown, whether, please report to your homeroom. I mean, things we can put on there which help also. So it's gonna, and if we say to the board, hey, if we have the money, can we approve this? Then you've got a company that can't do it overnight. So you also they need to have manpower to go in there and get it done too, and that does take time because, quite frankly, our buildings are used all day long, and that's why you see these people working third shift because that's when the buildings are not as busy.
From a technology perspective, other potential upgrades to other buildings, sounds like that would happen in the next maybe couple of years or whatever. We don't anticipate any significant changes in technology that would affect that building.
If you know, let us know. We try to stay up on what's next. I mean, CBE does a great job of talking to others and going to conferences and hearing what's next. I think a lot of our AI is from the instructional side. We see that, how is that going to impact? We don't think that's an infrastructure component. You look at the field house and bandwidth and speed. What does that look like with the increased population down there? What are the kids going to bring next to school, or what are we going to use next? I mean, we're not bringing back overhead projectors, so we got to figure out what kind of stuff. But yes, it's always something to keep in mind. I think that's the backbone that we're concerned about. You get those network closets up to par, then the sky's the limit on the other things that we do.
Any other questions on the high school clock and public announcement bid recommendations? Moving on, maintenance truck purchase recommendation.
Yes, we are asking for approval to purchase 2 new Dodge, they're essentially plow trucks. The market has changed a great deal in the last several years, and we're not able to, so it's not uncommon for a manufacturer to no bid, or in this case, Berger's they don't have any inventory, and they said to them, right now Chevy doesn't have the line running. So there is inventory out there in other places. It's just we didn't bother a lot of other dealers because they're like gold. They're just they don't have the deal on those trucks. So we felt we already had fair pricing from Baldwin Ford and Fox Chrysler Dodge Ram. Usually we want to know, are we expanding the fleet or replacing? In this case, we have some 2016 and 2012 Ford plow trucks that are starting to cost us money on maintenance, and we're not going to get rid of them. We're going to push them down to there's other places in the district where they need trucks that they don't use every day for plowing. So, and then those oldest trucks, we scrapped one out this year because it was in a collision. But there's another truck in the district we're going to push down and then scrap that truck. So, yeah, that's our request, and we feel that they're close enough for service. They got their warranty matches up with what we're looking for, and the days are gone that we can call, and at least 2 of the manufacturers have we call it GSA. They have like a government program for pricing. It's just not, they don't need to do that anymore. Maybe that time will come back, but it's just not there right now.
Any questions for Pat?
I'm assuming anything else that they use for attachments for plowing is compatible with all of these.
We'll buy separate. We'll buy new plows for these.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're buying it with the plow package.
Gotcha.
So it's coming with those,
Yep.
that receiver, but and the extra built up front end. But we'll buy the plow separate.
These 3 will come to the board at the next session.
Any other questions for Pat?
Thank you.
Thank you very much on hard work.
Thanks.
Moving on to our diversity advocacy committee discussion.
I gave a quick update at our last work session, want to keep you informed, so I've asked Mandy to say a few words about where we are. And I would hate to say this, but Ann's fortunate to go watch the lacrosse game in this weather versus Friday's weather.
Yes.
Yes.
It's much better.
Can't miss that senior season. So Mandy's going to just give us a quick update on where we are.
Mandy, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On my original, agenda that I copied this afternoon, it didn't have these.
We added those today in our meeting this
Okay,
morning. Robin wasn't here, so I added them this morning.
Okay,
To there. Those are the ones that drive, I talked about this at our board meeting last week. Those align directly with our strategic plan. So if you look
oh,
at
okay,
the,
okay,
the general topic, if you
Sure.
say, one of the things we talked about is getting updates on our strategic plan. So I would say there are 4 areas that address this
great,
general discussion from our strategic plan.
okay,
So
thank you.
C would be curriculum, SS is special services, and then if it's ST or LT, long-term, short-term, whether it's goal 1, 2, 3, or 4, those are listed out.
Thanks for
We'll
explaining.
try to do a better job. We missed it until this morning,
Yeah.
and so that's why.
I just didn't know if it was one of the things that you've been looking at, one of the programs, and you've already got it. So anyways, okay, thank you.
Okay, so hopefully last month you heard that we proposed kind of an ambitious timeline to continue to make progress in the hopes of bringing the recommendation at the end of the committee process, knowing that we also want to do our due diligence with each of the steps. And so we have described phase 3 as sort of a research and brainstorming phase. So I'm going to apologize. I got my eyes dilated this morning, or this afternoon, so I don't think I can see that or this, but maybe you can. But in phase 3, we just talk about researching potential solutions. So the committee did a great job of casting a really wide net and really interviewing almost many local districts, both in Kent, Ottawa, and Muskegon County, about what are you doing around this topic, what else is out there, as well as looking at the MDE resources page and anything that's coming through professional development through their department. And so the committee had compiled a list of about 35 different options, and so then it was time to kind of dig deep and lift up what do we want to really dig into to learn more about. So to do that, what we did is we took our problem of practice and we broke it up into 3 parts, which really just mirror sort of the 3 sentences of our problem of practice. So here, let's try this. Does that help? No? Okay. Well, anyways, what that says is the first part is we know as a committee and we recognize that there is discrimination and harassment occurring in our schools related to protected factors or towards students that are within protected classes. And we know from our laws and our board policies that we are to create an anti-harassment for all students. So knowing that that was a piece of the problem of practice, committee members spent a lot of time, individual time, and group time diving into what of the potential solutions that have been brainstormed align with that piece of the problem of practice, right? So if they found a resource that they really felt had a great alignment to that piece of our problem of practice statement, then they wrote it down for further discussion. Then the second part says, the DAC also acknowledges that instances of discrimination and harassment are not limited to these protected classes. So I know that there's also been comment, and even in our committee conversations, which I know Mark and Greg have had an opportunity to listen to, is that that voice is still there and saying, what about all students, right? And what about the student that gets bullied or harassed, but it's about things outside of those protected factor identities. So that's this piece of our problem of practice statement where we're also saying what are potential solutions that might also address this portion of our problem of practice statement. And then finally, the last part of our statement that we've all voted on and we've decided as our starting point, it shares that we are interested in collecting better data, implementing proactive measures, and continually monitoring and improving in this area of practice. So that was the homework between February and March. And then we came back together in our March meeting and we lifted up, okay, how many members had item number 1 on your sorting sheet? And so we really were able to elevate the top 5 or 6 choices that were on a lot of people's lists. And then our plan for our April meeting is to have different representatives from those programs or ideas speak to us about what it looked like in their district, how it was implemented, and what outcomes they were able to observe. So those include a range of things from districts that have pursued a student panel to serve as sort of an advisory board about what would be helpful in their school. Another option is something called Loving Our Students on Purpose. Another option is talking about restorative practices and the training that's available through the ISD. And then interesting timing-wise, just last month, our secondary principals attended a meeting at the ISD, and they're also developing a program about daring conversations, and they're all about helping students identify, how to use their voice as bystanders or onlookers and the role that they have in, supporting their community. So we have some good things to discuss, and I feel like we're narrowing in on choices that we may have consensus on. So, I don't know yet if we'll be at a landing spot in June, but we have a process in front of us that we're hoping that will guide us in that direction. So we also started talking about what will be our criteria matrix. And so we're just going to look at using something simple like this. The group began to brainstorm what are things that are going to be important in any solution that we might choose. And so obviously we want alignment to our problem of practice. We want something that comes with resources, something that will be a great community fit, feasibility, something that has had prior success elsewhere, and an emphasis on relationships and culture. So we haven't voted on this design yet. Those are just the criteria that that members raised as being important to them. So I think we're headed in a nice direction. Do you have any questions for me?
I love how this has continued to evolve,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing that metric that then everyone's going to participate in, and just like we did with the SOAR goals,
Mm-hmm.
what are the priorities, and then how do we narrow that down?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be very interested to see how that comes out of the committee,
Mm-hmm.
and hear more about some of the options that you have.
Wendy, this is really important work. Has there been any talk of continuing to meet over the summer?
I haven't proposed that. That's been difficult, just with people's personal time with family. But, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just don't know people's availability, but that would probably be something important to discuss. Yeah.
I would just hate if the group has momentum
Yes.
that we're taking 3 months off on something that is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. We have talked about just the feasibility of virtual meetings too, and times that people are away. So something to be decided, for sure.
Mandy and,
Yeah.
and the rest of the board, I've been attending these meetings for the last year just about. And I will say that this last meeting I thought was the most productive meeting you had as a group. I thought there was a lot of consensus. People were, talking freely about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted, Dr. Vanderjack had said to me a couple of months ago, he said that we're not going to bring stuff to the board until we narrow it down to what we think is important. So I have not made any presumptions based on the 10 or 12 things that you've seen there. I'm respecting your wishes to say, okay, wait until we bring it to you, and then if you have any concerns, that's what I'm doing now. And I think that was very good advice. So, I was very pleased with what I saw at the last meeting.
Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way this is evolving and I know there's a certain element of learning as we go, evolving this. It's just not like there's the end, we gotta get to this. So the way this is evolving is really good and thoughtful, and to echo Dr. Hooper's comments, it's so important to the district. So thanks for the time and the energy, effort that's gone into a really thoughtful process. Really, really well done. I would agree with Greg that anxious to see the continued progression.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other questions for me? Thank you very much. Next up, we have our board code of conduct review. That is attached. Any questions on that? I did ask Robin to print a copy if the board felt that we were at a place where we could sign it tonight. If there needs to be any further discussion or not.
So, refresh my memory. Was there one of these that was there a couple of them that we were thinking about potentially revising, or am I misremembering that? Discussion did we have a discussion around number 14 last time?
That's coming up on the
It's next
policy
agenda
review.
Policy.
We're adding that to the policy.
Thank you. That's what my head was. I knew I saw it.
We were gonna reverse some, but I
Yeah.
thought it's,
Got it.
this was probably the discussion you
Got it.
So, yeah, thanks, Don, for your, your notes were very helpful.
Yeah.
As a
Very
refresher.
helpful.
Are we making any changes?
I
How
guess
are you
that's up to
feeling?
the board.
Discussion.
Yeah, it's up for discussion. I personally don't see the need for any changes, but that's just me.
I appreciated the discussion though, and I had some questions on just the historical context on a few of these. It was helpful to walk through that. Sure.
But I just had a question for you, Don. This document you brought to the board meeting, I wasn't clear on why you brought that and if I had committed some crime, what it was exactly.
Sure. So I brought that when we discussed the last, 11 through 14, because it dealt directly with some of the perceptions that are out there. And so I had produced that as an example of the things that are available in public record that, in my opinion, has some influence on how the public perceives the board or certain individuals of the board.
So did I do something wrong?
I'm not sure what you're really asking. In my opinion, I think you may have violated the tenor of that particular item, but I am not the one to opine as to whether it's legal or illegal.
You brought it to the board.
I brought it here as part of the code of conduct conversation.
I know that. You could have called me about that.
If we're having a public discussion of the board, it was a relevant factor. And I'm not the only one who was privy to that information online.
Well, it's public information, but I didn't understand how that related to the code of conduct and what, if I violated something, I'm happy to acknowledge that.
I think there have been prior times where that's been discussed. I'm not sure either I didn't express it well or you weren't listening well.
I'm listening.
But I think our goal here tonight, as I understand it, is to determine whether there's anything that has to be changed. If not, if we're all good with signing this exact code of conduct, then that's great. I think we've had some great discussions and clarifications of some things that, as a board, we need to hold ourselves to. And I think our consultant also pointed out how important that was, that it's not necessarily a matter of legal or not legal, it's something we all signed on to, and as such, I think we need to uphold that.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. It's only that you brought a document with my name on it, the contribution I made. The implication seemed to be that I had done something wrong. And if I had, I'm willing to face that. But I don't know that I did anything wrong. And I didn't want to leave the impression at a meeting that Mark had done something wrong by making a contribution to a PAC.
And I think it's important to point out that I specifically did not share that with the general public. I had shared it only with the members of the board. So if you want to have a discussion on the record about that, that's up to you. But my point in providing it to the members of the board without specifically making mention of your name was intentional, Mark. And so hopefully you respect the fact that I was trying to be respectful to you, but also pointing out how I felt you had violated the code of conduct.
Now, there you go. Where did I violate the code of conduct here in this?
If you look at number 13, I think it's, again, people's perception may not be your reality, but I have had many people in the community who knew this information and have made it very clear that they think that that is a violation of the code of conduct. And whether or not you agree with that, I think it was a relevant point in talking about how people perceive the board. And those are perceptions that are important as we move forward.
Yeah, but I can't control everybody's perceptions on.
You're right, but you
and
can do your best to avoid situations where it might be perceived in a way that speaks negatively to you and perhaps the board as a whole.
I'm just trying to narrow the discussion down. If I give another $100 to this PAC, is that going to be another issue for the board
I
to
think that's
discuss?
a decision you have to make and consider whether or not doing so is helpful or not. And I can't speak to your personal choices. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We all have the right to vote and to support who we want to support. But we also have signed a document that has said to each one of these board members, to the best of my ability, this is what I will do. And I think it's only right that if you sign something and it's violated, that it should be pointed out. I can remember when there was a board member who hardly ever attended the meetings, and it was appropriate to be mentioned to him that that was a violation of our code of conduct. And if you've taken that personally, I'm sorry, but I had specifically passed that information to board members only for that exact purpose, that we could point out perceptions, but I did not specifically reference an individual for that reason.
I know, but I can't be convicted on perceptions. I have to have violated something done.
It is totally up to you, Mark. I'm just saying that this is what I have understood is a perceived wrongdoing, and I think it has hurt the board. And if the purpose of the code of conduct is to say this is how I will behave, in my opinion, I would rather default to not going down that path.
But
Can I?
just a simple question, is a donation to a PAC by a board member a violation of the code of conduct?
I believe it is.
I have that's a little different, but I know that pretty much all of us that ran, we all sat in front of the HEA, not necessarily PAC. They're a union that supported folks as well. And they donated several $100s to each of those candidates. So there could be a perception there that you could be beholden to the union because they gave a significant amount. I had no problem sitting in front of them. I wasn't on the board at that time. I would have not personally had any problem. I mean, if a previous board member had been elected, having received theirs, I would not have held that against that individual. And I mean, we've got an election coming up in November, which I don't know if you gentlemen are planning to run again, but if you were to be supported by the HEA, I personally would not hold that against you at all. I mean, I was very clear when I was running, like, hey, I'm trying to bring support from all sides. I just, that came into my mind after the discussion. I get where you're coming from. I get where Mark's coming from. There's other scenarios too that I want to be aware of. I wouldn't want to like hamstring a sitting board member from being allowed to get the support of.
I think the difference is the organization of HEA was supporting candidates. In this particular case, a sitting board member contributed to an organization that was trying to influence a vote. There is, in my opinion, a difference there. And if we're saying that we can't have a discussion and there can't be questions about whether someone's violated a code of conduct, then part of me says, what's the point? And again, I've said it before, if you feel I have violated one of these codes of conduct, I would have hoped that during this process, you would have specifically addressed that with me. And I had addressed it in the most private, non-public way that I could without failing to address it. And Mark, for me to call you and discuss this with you would not have been beneficial to the rest of the board members, which was the whole purpose of having this conversation.
One other clarification. Again, you mentioned the individual in the past who had not shown up to meetings, so they were in violation. How was that addressed? Was that like in a work session environment that it was addressed with
I
them?
reached out and communicated to that individual and said, you can't force anybody to show up, obviously. But I said, we haven't seen you in board meetings, and I don't remember exactly what it was. But I reached out to that individual specifically and said, hey, be good if you show up at board meetings.
Okay.
Paraphrase.
And then
Yes, exactly, any question.
Shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Made the
That's what
decision.
Mark, you know?
I just don't want the code of conduct to be used to cast a shadow over someone who has not clearly done something, which is a violation. And it can't be for a perception, it has to be a clear violation. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think I've ever seen a board member whom I would say has violated the code of conduct, but perhaps with one exception of the gentleman who moved to Florida and stopped coming to board meetings. And so I just don't like the code of conduct being used as a hammer to hurt people with. And I think that's what you've done, Don.
If that's how it's perceived, I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah, I think that, I think that this paper that he handed out didn't fit what's going on here. And it was probably an inappropriate thing to do. When you're talking about, Nick brought up influencing a vote, obviously, who's ever contributing to anybody is trying to influence a vote. I mean, you know, that's why they do it, okay? So, and one of the things you talked about too was PACs and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the NEA is the biggest PAC in the country, and that's fine. And as Nick pointed out,
Actually, they're not a PAC.
Well,
They probably have a PAC.
right, they have a
But the
PAC.
association itself
Right,
is not a
they
PAC.
have a PAC, thank you. And so, when you look at the amount of money that was contributed during the last campaign, I would think those were, I think, if not the largest, one of the largest contributors. So, are you concerned that there's a shadow over the board because the HEA through the MEA contributed money to candidates? And that's something that, you know, if someone gets elected with that type of a backing, is that gonna be something that you're gonna bring up to the board, or are you gonna be as concerned about that as you were about this $100 that Mark contributed?
I'm not sure you were listening to me.
I
Andrew, would you please?
Yeah, I think that one key difference here is we're talking about Mark
Mm-hmm,
giving money to a PAC.
mm-hmm,
I think what Nick brought up is the reverse of that. And I think there's a distinction there to be made.
mm-hmm.
So I think that if board members are, personally, I think if board members are contributing to PACs that have their own agendas that may or may not be in alignment with what we're trying to achieve here in our mission statement, I think that could be a perceived issue.
Mm-hmm. Would you have a problem with that?
Do I personally have a problem with Mark
No. would
donating
you-
$100?
Right,
Mark can do whatever he wants with
Okay,
his money.
thank you.
But that's not the point. The point is, what does that mean to the public? What is all part of this was to talk about our relationship with the public, our relationship with the teachers, etc. And so perception is important here.
and on read 13 here, I will render all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment and avoid undue or prejudicial influence of outside groups. That's what this was talked about under. I don't think that applies to that at all.
And you're certainly entitled
Yeah,
to
right,
that opinion.
right, yeah.
And I think the point is that through the review of the code of conduct, through the discussion that we've had, that reflection on the different points, and yes, you may feel one way, Greg, you
Sure.
may feel another, or you may feel the same, or whatever.
Right.
But the reflection upon, there's HA money, or there's this money, or that money, or I'm doing this, or they're doing that.
Mhm.
Okay, does that, how do I feel about that as a board member, relative to my role on the board and to the perception to
Sure.
the community, the public, and so forth. And so I think it's meant, to me, it was meant to be a reflection activity, and we all have to make some, we all have to discern what that means to us.
Right, thank you.
That's why it's good.
I would just add that if a board member has an issue with a board member, that they take it to him personally
Mhm.
and talk to him. I think that's appropriate.
I gave money to everybody who asks me for money.
So I'm gonna come back and, Dr. Hooper, I'm aligned with you. I'm aligned with the code of conduct as written and
Past tense.
comfortable with moving forward.
Past tense.
Excuse me, Ken, could you repeat that?
I just commented that I'm aligned with Barb in terms of the code of conduct, and the reflection process I think was good and thoughtful, and she started off the conversation by saying she didn't have any proposed changes, and I'm aligned with you on that. So.
I agree. I think one of the reasons I think one of the reasons we started doing this was to potentially identify goals that we may want to set for ourselves as a board. Where did we land on that, or what are the next steps?
Next steps, if we sign this, then we can look at developing goals at the next work session.
Okay.
If we have specific goals we'd like to develop.
Gotcha. And part of that might come from number
From
7 on
number
our
as well.
agenda too.
Perfect. Yeah, no more
Are there
comments.
any other questions or comments on the board of conduct? Okay. Robin, if you have copies, we can go ahead and start it around.
Could you sign two, just so I can be sure?
So Robin's requested that we sign 2 copies.
And just each.
Why don't we start down with Mr. Davis and we'll just work it all the way around. While everyone is signing that, we will move on to policy review, the board ethics.
There are no changes to the code of conduct, correct?
Correct.
So that is also in policy. So you talked about number 13, that was in policy. So it's not just a code of conduct conversation, it's a policy conversation that the board actually adopted. 14 was not in policy, but it was in code of conduct. So it is a suggestion revision to add it to the policy. And that's it.
Yes, and you have added that as number N.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yes, I got to do my alphabet,
Yes.
but
It was the
sure.
last one.
If 14 is N,
Yes.
that's it. 13 should be N, so N would make sense.
The board ethics policy matches our code of conduct.
It will.
It will
We'll have
after
2
it's-
readings.
Yes,
and
after we have the readings.
correct, it won't be until May, but yes.
Correct.
I just noticed on the bottom, the copyright from Neil was 2016. That's why I
That'll
was.
change once we update the date to 24.
Not necessarily, because if it's on the bottom and it's legal.
We can change it because this is not a legal
Okay.
requirement. We also had, just to be clear, on the past code of conduct, it said that we renew this every January as not an oath, but as our commitment to Hudsonville Public Schools. We removed that primarily because this is not January. That's it.
Any questions on the policy? Otherwise, it'll come for a first reading at our next board meeting. All right. Moving on is our board self-assessment training review. As you know, we had Frank come, it seems like a while ago, but within the last 3 weeks ago. And he recommended a couple things. I just wanted to talk to the board about that. One thing he talked about is possibly completing a DISC profile assessment. And I didn't know how board members felt about that. Do you think it would be beneficial? Yay, nay? It's about how you communicate and how people's perceived communication styles are.
Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think my perspective is, before we started that meeting, we all talked about what we wanted to get out of it. And I think that a decision to do this assessment should come from first a discussion about where we're at, what we got out of the meeting, and what we want to do next. I think if one of the things that we came up with, and maybe it is having a better understanding of how we all operate and how we all communicate, then maybe it'd be worth it. But I think it's probably helpful to maybe regroup first on what we got out of the session, and more broadly speaking, kind of what suggested next steps are. Maybe that's one of them, but there could be 3 others or something, and maybe we decide from there.
Shall we open it up then to how did we feel about the training then? Review.
I like the fact we all had closer computers. Then I didn't feel compelled to take notes, but to really listen. I think there were some good reminders. I think we can tend to get myopic when we're contained within a district. And I know you have pointed out before, Mark, that you've gone to national, national associations and the Michigan ones. And I do think the one huge advantage to, especially the ones that I have gone as well, is to see how different districts do things. And I have to say that in the 2 times that I've gone, I would say I definitely walked away feeling like we had a really great model. I will say that model was probably prior to 2018 as far as a conference I attended, but I still think our overall model of how we run the district, how we run the board, you really realize how unique you are. So having been reminded of that, I would really like us to consider again, either trying to get a couple of us to attend some of these conferences, or as he suggested, is there some informal gathering that may be helpful to get us out of these particular elements of the nights that we meet. That's the only time we see each other. So it's just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scores on a lot of those things were pretty. I mean, the spread on some of those was pretty significant. It would have been nice to kind of maybe have some more pointed conversations about where some of those outliers were. I know we touched on some of it. I don't think a disc assessment is going to fix that, right? I mean, that's just my perspective. And you can look at the 4 criteria for, there's dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness. I think we all probably kind of know where we fall in that continuum already. So I feel like, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I feel like we need to have like a plan for, if we do this, here's the expected outcome, right? Just like we did with the work session. We're having this guy come in, we're gonna all spend 3 hours talking about things. Did we get out of it what we wanted to? And if not, why? If we're gonna do this disc assessment, what are we trying to get out of it and why? So we can measure our progress against what we're trying to achieve, right? And I think what we're trying to achieve is more unity, more openness, more maybe interaction isn't the right word, but with the community, so that we don't feel so divided on all these things, right? So I think to me it starts with understanding what we're trying to achieve and then thinking about those solutions to kind of get there. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you. I mean, I've taken the disc a few times
Yeah.
in my career. Probably several of us have, and sometimes you're like, whatever. I came out of the discussion actually pretty encouraged because, as was stated earlier tonight, I think we tried to make ourselves a little vulnerable that night. And to me, what better way to model that? Because I think a lot of times in life when you have disagreements with different personalities, you got to be willing to be a little vulnerable. And we're sitting here on camera every time. I think it's a healthy exercise for us to go through and model that behavior. And I personally think that a lot of the issues that we've had are communication issues over the last year or so that I've been on here. And having that outside perspective to be able to call it out, like maybe sometimes we're not able to call it out. And if we get the right consultant who does these personality profiles, they're actually can be really good at, hey, this personality and this personality, yeah, we kind of know that there can be some conflict there, but then being able to walk through that with some of that data to be able to say, hey, here's maybe different ways to communicate that way. And sometimes that's the healthier exercise as opposed to just giving you your disc profile. But how will 7 unique personalities be able to communicate better? That's the last thing I want to do is fill out another profile.
I agree.
But I think that's the value in something like that, having us another opportunity to walk through and process some things together. With that, because I want to get past the point of us working on our own personal stuff and get back to focusing on the students. And I think if we can justify our communication and how we work together, will ultimately help the students, to me that would make it worthwhile.
I hear and respect what you're saying. I don't see a communication issue. I think there are some differences on the board relative to different topics that may come up and different opinions around those topics, be it ruler or be it a book or whatever. And there are some differences on the board. And I don't perceive that I mean, I know where Greg stands. I may disagree with Greg, but I know where Greg stands, or Barb, or whatever, or Mark, or whatever. So I don't perceive a communication gap, just my perspective. So there are differences in different topics, and to me there are, and I think it's something that, kind of back to Andrew's point that I'll come back to, perhaps we can work on. I still perceive that there are some differences in terms of how different board members view our role in governance. And so as I think about, kind of looping back to Andrew's point, we go through the session with Frank, and I think it's important to reflect on that. What do we want to come out of it? I don't see a value in the desk. I've also taken it many times, and quite frankly, you can alter the outcome, based on the week or the day or what I have for breakfast or whatever. So I'm not dissing the disc, but I know I don't see it as a. So I think that the conversation of different opinions and perspectives is important. I think if we can continue to, in a professional and respectful manner, share those differences of opinion. There will be differences of opinion on this board. There will be. Most of our votes, I don't know, 90%, 95%, are going to be 7-0. Our own things like we talked about tonight with Mr. Briggs, which is good stuff, leading the district forward. The curriculum stuff we talked about the last time, just really good, solid stuff. And I think we're all aligned on that. There will be contentious issues that pop up I think if we can talk about them professionally and respectfully and work together as a team, then we'll just accept that. There may be a 4-3 vote here or a 5-2 or whatever the case may be. And then back to your point, again, what you're thinking about goals, what do we want to focus on? What do we want to say, hey, let's try and do this? Again, I applaud Nick and Barb, for example, for completing the CBA 101. An admirable goal. Congratulations on completing that. As an example of a goal that we say, okay, I'm not going to go back and complete CBA 101, but there are other classes that, okay, for senior board members, perhaps take 3 classes during the year, something like that. So, or we have some other classes perhaps in MASB that they offer that we can consider. So that's my perspective. I don't see a communication gap. I see differences of opinion and the need to continue to work together to bridge those and respect differences of opinion and move on. I'm sure this board gets tired of me hearing me harp on it, but again, support for the superintendent. I don't think we can keep going back and reevaluating the superintendent, which was the last category in here. There's yet another reevaluation of the superintendent by somebody's comments. I think we have to move on from that. So we support the superintendent, we support our teachers, our central office team, and our job is to go forward as a broader team to drive the district further toward excellence. And we have to move forward instead of relitigating things that are ancient history now. So.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Kent, I agree with a lot of what everyone said. I've taken that diss thing a lot of times, and I don't think we have a communication issue. I think we're able to communicate with each other, pointedly on some things. And just like, the question that I had with you, Andrew, it was a pretty intense question, but it's easy, right? Exactly. So I'm comfortable with everybody here. Everybody does their homework, I think, in this room. I don't think that there's anybody who comes. And if you have a sluggard on the board, sometimes that causes some problems and things like that. But I think we've come a long way in the last couple of months, understanding who we are, trying to be as gracious as we can and saying some very direct things. And Ken, what you said about governance, I think I've come a long way in the last year about what I, at the beginning, thought I should be doing and what I'm doing now. Maybe it has to be tempered more, I don't know, but there's been a difference based on some of the things that you've said. And so I respect everybody on this. And like I said, I don't think there's a communication problem. So, and what Nick said, let's get on with what we're here for.
So that's a no to the disc assessment.
But a good discussion about why.
Don't get me wrong.
Was it unanimous?
I'll come around on that. I'll vote a no. Guess talk me into it.
Yeah, I think it's important, like I said before, I'll just reiterate it, to revisit our broader goals. And then if there are things like Dawn, you suggested about attending conferences or informal things that kind of stem from that, I think that's important. But when it comes to goal setting, it's like, what are you trying to achieve? Let's focus on what we're trying to achieve first, and then let's talk about how we're going to get there and set goals for ourselves to achieve what it is we're after. It seems like we're trying to jump to a solution before we've calculated what the problem is, or articulated what the problem is, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
So maybe on another work session, we revisit the goals. We already have like 3 or 4 we've kind of kicked around.
Right, we had, and I think solidifying those into measurable goals over the next year is probably what we need to do next.
And I would recommend any more than probably 2 to 4.
Yes, I
I
agree.
agree. Yeah.
4 is quite a bit, 2 to 4. All right, so at our next work session, shall we have goals on there?
Do we have I'm not disagreeing with that, but do we have a starting point? You referenced.
You referenced a couple.
Yeah, that was,
Remember.
probably the first time was in October, maybe? One of them was reviewing the code of conduct to see if there's anything that needed to be changed. One was, seeing about encouraging people to go to a couple classes or whatever. And then it seems like there was 1 or 2 others, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, I apologize.
So to streamline the process a little bit, would it make sense for board members to, again, now having been through the assessment, having been through the code of conduct review and so forth, to take a little time individually and think about, okay, these are the 1 or 2 things that I think about, and then to, and again, I'm just putting this out as a proposal, so you can disagree with me, that's fine. But to send those 1 or 2 thoughts to the president, and Dr. Hooper can summarize and bring them together and go, okay, this is what I got from the board. And so we're kind of starting from a starting point in the meeting as opposed to from scratch. Does that make sense or not?
That's a good idea, Ken. If
Okay.
everyone could really reflect and then send 1 or 2 things to me, I can summarize it, and it would give us a starting point instead of just sitting here.
Yeah.
Like that idea.
I did look back at my,
And our goal is at the bottom, our mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
The mission of the Hudsonville Public Schools is to educate, challenge, and inspire all learners to become contributing, responsible members of a global society. That's our goal.
What I looked back at my notes, one of the other things that we had talked about is trying to figure out how we can reach out or be more interactive with the staff. And I think that was where we had initially started with the idea of making sure people were signed up for March's reading and other things, but maybe we can make that a little bit more cohesive of a goal that's measurable, that board members go to so many events or, something to that effect.
Maybe this isn't for this discussion. I don't want to put Dr. Vanderjack on the spot, but again, I appreciate your perspective on things too. So if it would be appropriate for you to send a couple notes on how we can support you better, if that's.
I would just ask the board to maybe reflect on some of the SOAR data, because that's what drove our strategic plan. And that might be a great starting point also, to reflect on some of that data, to say, what does that look like moving forward? That's how the plan was derived to begin with. I know a lot of you were at those meetings and saw kind of that work in action, so maybe there are things that came out of some of your subgroups that might kind of help shape that.
Thanks.
Other comments? Okay. Hearing none, we'll do a roundtable, and we'll start with Dr. Vanderjack.
Thanks. I have 2 things I'd like to bring to the board's attention. We meet Mondays for quite a while in cabinet, and these are things that I could have put on the agenda, but it was Monday morning, and if I wait till Friday, I just want to let you know two things. One, we put out information about developmental kindergarten, doing a half day, kind of a split between general ed, special ed, so we have a mix. We not have the expected population volume to be able to run something like that. So we're going to notify our administrators this week and the parents that requested this, and then maybe try to get it out a little bit earlier next year. We've have some ideas of how to do that, maybe some scheduling adjustments. So this year's not going to work for next school year, I'm sorry, but then the following year, hopefully we can get out a little bit earlier. So I'll give more of an update on Friday, but we have to start notifying people now. So I didn't want you to hear about it from somebody saying we didn't get in. You're like, oh, that's why. Any questions on that? The other one is, this is a little bit longer story. We have been receiving 31N dollars, which are channeled to the ISD, and then allow us to have, we call our OCSN, or Ottawa County Schools Network, right? It's individuals, we have 3 of them, one at Baldwin, one at Allward, was at Allward, now it's at the high school, and then one at South. So right now it's high school, Baldwin, South. And it's really a network for parents that also need assistance with things with, a lot of times when students are maybe struggling, it's because there are things that are struggling at home. Could be finances, could be laid off, could be a housing situation. You see a lot of the support for our families when we do our Thanksgiving drives and the Shop with a Hero at Meyer and so forth. So that funding, everything was hired through the ISD. And they used as a HR component United Way as their hiring agency, but it was all funded through the ISD. They're done with that, and so the money is now can be channeled either to the district, or we don't want it at all. So we would like it, but now it's channeling all through the district, which means technically they're brand new hires for us, because even though we had these people, they were not employed by us, they were employed through the ISD, through the United Way. So now they have a chance of coming back here. But what happens is now instead of us, the ISD, getting the money and channel it back, we actually get additional dollars because other schools are not doing this. So we are taking it on ourselves, but we believe, and I think we've done the math too many times, a lot, that screen's down, but when that screen was up, there were numbers all over that board, trying to make sure we had this figured out right. We have a way to keep those 3 people in capacities a little bit different because of certification. So you have certification requirements with 31N. Since it's on the district, you have to be licensed a certain way. Not all of them are, but we have also potential of one of them being an OCSN coordinator that still can do things district-wide and building-wide. On top of that, it releases additional dollars that we can use, that we'll get from 31N to increase the number of support personnel with therapy, if you look at it that way. So we've talked about that before. I sent an update to the board Friday about finally getting somebody through Arbor Circle that can support our middle schools. So now we have people we can support elementary. We'd like to bring on more. And this is a way to do that. That is a very long conversation. I hate to put it this way, but I think we've done an amazing job. I don't want to say just trust me, but it's hard to explain everything that went into meeting with the ISD countless times, meeting with fellow superintendents, having those meetings, going through all the numbers. There's a matching amount that we have to put, but we've already got that through a different grant. So we're matching the dollars instead of through operation through a grant that was increased. So by moving, it's a puzzle. By moving things around, we're able to get more pieces out of the same puzzle. If that makes sense. Did I say that? That was my analogy. Horrible analogy. So that's a very, just to say, we continue to want to increase mental health support for our kids. And we believe this is a way to not only do it, but do it without increasing operational expenses. Because we have grant dollars that are now shifted around. The only downfall, and I can say that now that Ann has left, is now they're employed by us. So we have to come up with salary structure, job description, posting, all of those components that fall within our within our component here at Hudsonville versus basically the ISD.
How long will these streams of income continue, do you know?
Based on what we've seen, we believe not only will it be consistent for years to come, but probably increase. The governor's made it very clear, and I think even the legislature, that these categorical dollars for mental health supports are not going away anytime soon. And we're seeing the same thing with safety and security. There are other categoricals that we might see diminish. Some of the not security from a district standpoint, but oversight, some of those might go away. But I would dare say that we think these dollars are not, they don't expire, as Greg had referenced about some of our security dollars we have to spend by September of 24 or September of 25. These we believe will be long lasting.
Thank you.
And to your point, if they do set to expire at some point or diminish or are eliminated, then we have to, like all programs, and figure out is that the priority, and it might very well be a priority to maintain it and figure out a way to fund these locally.
Do you mind if I
Thank you.
just add?
Oh, please.
We have started working on the job description based on understanding the grant criteria. And the grant criteria under 31N is really specific that it's meant to provide additional direct care service by a licensed mental health therapist. So anybody that has a certified social work degree or counseling degree, psychology, psychiatry. So someone that is already licensed by Michigan. So because of that, there will be a shift in that the job description would look very specific to this mental health therapist role, which the dollars would support 3 of those positions. And then with the district match, we would also be able to support 1 position that would really prioritize the community school connection, and that person would be highly involved with our clothing closet and helping with McKinney-Vento needs with housing and continue to do the events that our OCSN coordinators have hosted, but do it from more of a district lens. So we hoped that our current OCSN coordinators will apply for these positions, but there is a difference in terms of what their job description is today and what will be posted. And I have been discussing a potential being ready to post it later this week, actually. So the position would start for next school year, but we hope to secure the person because all districts that have expressed interest in accepting the 31N, we're all trying to grab from the same pool. So.
Yeah, no, the 3 folks we have in those roles right now, like phenomenal people. So did I hear you right that all of them might not have the proper licensure?
That is correct.
So,
We've met with them countless times. We're well aware of where we are in the direction
I'm sure.
we plan on going. I just wanted to update the board because we need to start posting some of these and getting this going for next year.
Yeah.
so a couple of them would not then qualify for this position if they don't have the
One of them.
licensing credentials.
One of them.
So the community coordinator position, because it's a district match position from another grant, that does not have any licensing requirements. The mental health therapist will have to have a credential that is allowable by the grant.
We've structured this in such a way that we realize how valuable these people are.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to say, hey, we're redoing this and, thanks, but no thanks. We're trying to figure out a way.
I think their role for people that aren't like in the buildings on a regular basis doesn't probably realize what that role does. And I mean I'd love at some point if we could get one or all of them into to share in one of the teaching and learning features just about all of the things that they handle. I think it'd be eye-opening for a lot of people. It's a really it's not a role that was needed maybe when we were in elementary school, but with all the things that are going on in the world, it's pretty powerful what they're doing in the community
For
connections.
school. That's the hard
Well, I
part.
can tell you, we've been on these listening tours, and there's a laundry list of what they would like for
Those 3
school.
folks will tell you that. They want 10 more of them.
10 other things that they would like also. So thank you. I just wanted to update the board.
Thank you.
Just listening to this discussion makes me think about Ann Arbor. If you've been following the news at all, Ann Arbor Public Schools is really in dire straits. $25 million in cuts from the budget, driven at least partially by not being smart about how they budget or don't budget for this money that came in, federal government money that came in from COVID and so forth. And they locked in positions and did make some of the tough decisions that I know you guys make, the team makes every single day. So again, that just reinforces how much we appreciate the management, the fiscal management, and the resource management within the district. Thank you for that. I'll save my comments on the musical and reading month for the full board meeting. I'll save those for that. Just to come back to your comment about communication, a little more self-reflection around that. One of the things, certainly a key theme that I picked up from Frank throughout the discussion was, you guys are really doing a big job. This is a really strong district. And maybe your issue is communication, to your point, Nick. And so I recognize where you come from. But I certainly picked that up out of it. And sitting on this government relations committee for MASB, and there's 15 or 18 other districts in there. We are at the head of we do a very good job. The team, does a very good job. Now, the board is part of the team, but we do things in a very good way here at Hudsonville Public Schools, and we should all be very proud of that. So that's it.
Well, I'm still gonna talk about the play, even
You
though it's
may
on
go
the
ahead.
floor.
You can go ahead.
Phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure some of you attended and you know how long it was. I had 4 of my grandchildren between the ages of 2 and 7 that were with us. And one of them kind of went back and forth. But I tell you, they were so engaged. And the fact that Deb is able to add these elements to engage and have the little wands with lights and all that stuff, man, it was over the top. I had a good friend come with her granddaughter, and she's like, this is just phenomenal. She's seen our plays before, but just the quality. And the thing that I just so much love about Deb is that she enables her students to do this, even though she's part of it and she has a student director and others helping her. When it comes to the end, she said, this is your baby. Go do your job. And, a lot of high school students wouldn't be able to live up to that, but I think she had an expectation that was high, and those kids reached that expectation, and it's just phenomenal, So you can say what you want to say. The other thing was I went to South Elementary and Bauer this month for my reading, and again, so impressed. Both of the principals gave me a quick little tour. I got to see Bauer with some of the upgraded elements and how well that all fits in. I have to say I was a little nervous because I had to read the 3rd and 4th graders. All my grandkids are under 7, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? But they were so awesome, and I even threw in a couple little science-related questions that were in the book, and they knew the answers immediately. So I appreciated the teachers and the buildings for in supporting us, and the kindergartners were lovely and sat so still. It is just such a wonderful thing to do. So thanks for the privilege, and hope all of you got to do something like that.
Did they ask you your favorite color?
They did not.
No. Every single class I went to, they asked you questions. Color, every single time. I'm like, blue. So one kid, one of the classes, without missing a beat, he goes, that's my 4th favorite color. I'm like, well, okay. He's got it down. No, that was really fun to read. And again, I'm just big on the communication piece. And we've had not often that a group of 7 people have to be on microphones and all that all the time, but people don't get to see us in other events too. I think genuinely there is a respect and a like that we all have for each other, and everybody gets to see sometimes. It's fun to run into y'all at different events, whether it's the musical or a sporting event. One of the events that I was at on Saturday night was not a board function, but it was the dad of a kid who's an athlete in the district, and so we went to the athletic boosters function, and that was a really fun night to see a large number of people at the Pinnacle Center and just be reminded of all the cool things that are going on in our district now, but as they were inducting the Hall of Fame members, one of them was an old teacher who's, I'm surprised he wasn't inducted long ago, Mr. Thompson. We called him the General, but he finally got in. And then it was, I wish you were there, because your husband was honored with a Legacy Award. That was a really cool the voice of Hudsonville got acknowledged. So just those types of things remind me of why we're here doing this, why we care about the students, and why we care about this community. It's a great place to live.
Well, I will not be at the April board meeting, so I will talk about what I've done. I had the opportunity to read at Forest Grove and Jamestown Lower Elementary to first, second, and third graders. Every single group sat crisscross applesauce and listened, and not a one of them asked me my favorite color.
I must have that face. This guy's got a favorite color. We know.
Really, really a nice time with all the kiddos. Well-behaved, great teachers. Just really a nice time. Forest Grove, because my boys went there. Had the opportunity to see some of their teachers, and some of them had aged a bit. So it was really nice. And then on Saturday, usually on Saturdays, I watch the Hudsonville Winter Color Guard. And they're doing great this season. They have a really cool program. And one thing that I'm so proud of the Hudsonville Color Guard is they cheer on every other local school. They will cheer on Granville, Rockford, and they have helped other schools who have not had a JV team help get their mat out and help pick them up. And I am so proud of our students because you don't see that with the other schools. So truly, what a great district.
Did you go to the competition in Caledonia?
I did.
My granddaughter, she's a sixth grader, she's on the team.
JV?
So,
Yeah, I saw her then. Yeah, it's awesome.
I wanna thank Dr. Vanderjack and Mandy. I already thanked them personally, but I sent them an email a couple of weeks ago from a parent who was quite concerned about their child and stuff. And I didn't expect them to, get involved personally, but I really wanna thank you for that. The parent has thanked me, and I think they're gonna, without, setting expectations for everybody else, they're gonna let them know, hey, we're here to help. And they were just very, very happy. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll rinse and repeat here. So the play, absolutely unbelievable. My 7-year-old and 9-year-old loved it, and it is so impressive how impressive our students are. Like unbelievable performers, and they all could have a future somewhere. Like seriously, like in acting and things. So it's really cool to see. It's been busy with the reading stuff. I got to read at Park and also at Bauer. Bauer had their skating party a couple weeks ago, so that was fun to go to. The memories, that I used to have going there. That place like smells the same, But yeah, and then we had the Bauer boys had a boys' night at Craig's Cruiser Saturday night. So just so much fun stuff going on, and to interact with the students and interact with the teachers. It's just really cool, really, really rewarding. And on my way here today, I was pulling out of my driveway, and in my side yard there were like 12 boys. Most of them with their shirts off. Playing football, like doing all this stuff, and it's those little things, like we're here for them. Like we do what we do for them, and I'm invested because I have 2 kids in the district. But it's so cool to see all the great things that this district does, and thank you, Doug and Mandy, for all of your leadership and everything that you do. And Pat, over on that side, sorry, I didn't use it intentionally, but it's just it just feels good, to be in the buildings and to see those sorts of things. So definitely a proud Eagle. So
Before Andrew, is there any special things set up for like Wednesday truancy coming up? Well, I'm talking about in case parents leave the school early.
Oh.
There you go.
I will. My kids will not be in school on Wednesday. We're getting out of here.
Good for you.
Let's just hope we make our attendance rate.
I feel really bad if we miss it by 2 kids.
My wife Cynthia spent 25 years teaching English and Spanish in Hudsonville schools. Were you one of her students?
I wasn't. No.
It's too
I was
bad.
building, but
Yeah. She just returned from a month and a day in Bangladesh, teaching English as a second language, doing teacher training. So she's still got a lot of energy. And the house was clean when she got home. That's all I got.
All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that.
Support.
Nick, support from Dawn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.